Ada was returning to her native village after several years spent in the city. The sudden death of her grandmother had deeply shaken her, especially since the circumstances surrounding her passing remained unclear. Some whispered that it wasn't a natural death, but Ada refused to heed local superstitions. From the moment she arrived, a heavy atmosphere enveloped her. The villagers' gazes were evasive, their voices barely audible when they spoke of her grandmother. Upon entering the old family home, the smell of aged wood and dried herbs instantly reminded her of her childhood. Everything seemed frozen in time, as if her grandmother might reappear at any moment. Yet an unusual silence reigned, an unsettling void that even the nocturnal sounds couldn't fill. Ada spent her first night plagued by confused memories, lulled by the wind whistling through the gaps in the windows. The next day, while rummaging through her grandmother's belongings, she came across an old journal, its pages yellowed by time. Intrigued, she opened it and skimmed the first lines. Her heart quickly began to race. Each word seemed like a warning, a cry from the past meant to caution anyone who dare defy ancestral rules. Among the many prohibitions written in trembling handwriting, one sentence stood out. "Never wash after midnight, for the water becomes a mirror to the beyond." Ada closed the journal for a moment, trying to calm the icy shiver running down her spine. The idea that a simple habit like washing could be dangerous seemed absurd to her. Yet her grandmother's writing conveyed an urgency, an almost palpable fear, through the lines. Unable to resist her curiosity, she reopened the notebook and continued reading. The first pages recounted ordinary memories, stories of daily village life, births, harvests, and significant events. But as she progressed, the tone shifted. There were mentions of strange disappearances, nocturnal murmurs near wells, fleeting silhouettes glimpsed by rivers. One entry particularly caught her attention. I've seen what happens to those who defy the prohibition. I've heard their screams, seen their elongated shadows struggling in the darkness. The water at night is not the same as during the day. It belongs to others, to those who must not be disturbed. When their rest is troubled, they come to claim what is theirs. Ada felt her breath catch.
Who were they?
What was her grandmother talking about exactly? Was this just a superstition passed down through generations? Or was there some truth to it? She continued reading with heightened attention. Several accounts were recorded with disturbing detail. A young man from the village named Mamadou had once ignored this warning. On a full moon night, when the heat was unbearable, he went to the well to cool off. He returned home trembling, claiming a cold hand had brushed his shoulder as he dipped his hands in the water. In the days that followed, he changed. At first silent, he became agitated, muttering incoherent phrases about eyes watching him through the water's reflections. A week later, he vanished without a trace. Some claimed to have seen him walking barefoot toward the forest in the middle of the night, his clothes soaked. He never returned. Ada felt a shiver run through her. She vaguely recalled this story, a tale the village elders told children to keep them from wandering outside at nightfall. But this journal gave it a different perspective. It was no longer a legend. It was a warning, written in black and white, a caution left by someone who had seen the consequences of such an act with her own eyes. As she continued turning the pages, she came across an even more unsettling passage, written in larger letters as if her grandmother had wanted to emphasize its importance. The water is a passage. What lives in it must not be awakened. If you see a reflection that doesn't belong to you, look away and leave. But if you stay, prepare to face those who will come for you. Ada snapped the journal shut, her breath short. She tried to reassure herself, repeating that these were just old superstitions, but deep down, a strange feeling was taking hold, a doubt she had never felt before. She placed the journal on the old wooden table and collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling, attempting to rationalize what she had read. Since her return, she had sensed an odd atmosphere, an invisible tension weighing on the village and herself. Was it simply her imagination, influenced by these unsettling stories, or was something truly abnormal here? That evening, as she walked near the central well, She overheard a conversation between two elderly women. They spoke in hushed tones, casting wary glances around. "She's back," one murmured. "Mother Fatu's granddaughter," the other replied, nodding slowly. "She doesn't know anything, but if she digs too deep..." Silence fell abruptly when they noticed Ada's presence. They lowered their heads and walked away without another word. Ada stood frozen, her heart pounding. Why were they acting this way? Why were they talking about her as if she were in danger? That night, she struggled to fall asleep. Shadows danced on the walls, cast by the moonlight filtering through the shutters. Everything felt heavier, darker than the night before. A sound startled her, a faint splashing of water. She sat up abruptly, straining her ears. The house was empty, yet she had distinctly heard something, like drops falling onto the floor. She rose slowly and approached the bucket in the corner of the room. The water was still, but as she leaned over it, she thought she saw an imperceptible movement on its surface. A shiver ran down her spine. She quickly turned away, calling herself foolish. Exhaustion was surely playing tricks on her. But as she walked away, she had the strange sensation of an invisible gaze following her. The next day, she decided to learn more about these legends. She visited one of the village elders, an old man everyone called Baba Musa, who lived in a small hut surrounded by mysterious symbols painted on the ground. "So, Fatu left her journal, didn't she?" he asked as she entered. Ada nodded, surprised. "Then you've read the warning." "Yes, but I don't understand." "It's just superstition, right?" Baba Musa stared at her for a long moment before letting out a deep sigh. "What you call superstition, others call truth. There are things we can't explain to you, but you do well to respect them." He paused, then continued in a graver voice. "Have you ever heard of those who dwell in the water?" Ada shook her head. "They are neither dead nor alive. They exist between two worlds, and water is their passage. At night, when everyone sleeps, they rise, they search, they watch. If someone disturbs their rest, they notice. And when they set their gaze on you, it's already too late." Ada felt her heart tighten. "You mean if someone washes late, they draw their attention?" "Yes. They see you, they hear you, and if they find you interesting..." Baba Musa trailed off, shaking his head. "They disappear." A heavy silence settled. "It's just a story," Ada said with a nervous smile. "Perhaps," the old man replied, shrugging. "But no one here takes the risk of finding out." Ada left Baba Mouse's house with more questions than answers. It made no sense, yet something deep inside kept her from dismissing the warnings entirely. And yet, that night, she decided to defy the prohibition. The heat was stifling. Ada tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. Her mind was restless, torn between reason and the irrational fear sparked by the journal and the old man's tales. She sat up and glanced at the wall clock. Midnight had passed a few minutes ago. Her eyes fell on the bucket in the corner of the room. She hesitated. Her body was damp with sweat, dust clinging to her skin. These were just legends, weren't they? Just stories made up to scare children and keep them from wandering at night. A smile crept onto her lips. She would prove them wrong. Slowly, she got up, grabbed a clean cloth, and dipped a calabash into the bucket to draw water. Silently, she headed to the backyard, where a small basin sat under a mango tree. The wind blew gently, rustling the leaves. The moon cast a pale light, drawing strange shadows on the ground. Ada shivered, but forced herself to ignore the unease. She poured the cool water over her skin and sighed with relief. A wave of calm washed over her. There was nothing abnormal, just the silence of the night and the murmur of the wind. But as she prepared to pour another calabash of water, a sound made her freeze. Plop, plop, plop. Her heart raced. The noise came from behind her, near the family well. She turned her head slowly. Nothing, just the shadow of the old well under the moonlight. She laughed nervously. It was probably a nut falling from a tree or a nocturnal bird landing somewhere. She dipped the calabash back into the water and raised it to her face. That's when she saw it in the water's reflection, a silhouette behind her, one that hadn't been there a second earlier. Her breath caught. Her hands trembled, and the calabash slipped, crashing to the ground. She spun around violently. No one was there, but something had changed. The silence was no longer the same. It was oppressive, as if the entire world held its breath. Then she heard a whisper, not from far away, but close, too close, right beside her. She felt a cold, heavy presence, like a shadow gliding over her without touching. Her heart pounded at a terrifying speed. She wanted to flee, but her body refused to move. Then something brushed her shoulder. She screamed, a piercing cry that faded into the night. Ada stumbled backward, slipping on the wet ground. Her panicked gaze swept the surroundings, but there was still no one. Just the awful sensation that she wasn't alone. She crawled back, trying to stand, when she heard another sound, a splash, as if something was emerging from the well. She turned her head slowly, terrified. A chill of horror coursed through her. Pale, emaciated hands clung to the well's edge. Then a head emerged slowly, white, empty, soulless eyes, a half-open mouth letting out a moan. Ada screamed with all her might and ran toward the house. She stumbled several times, but survival instinct pushed her to get up each time. Behind her, the sound of wet footsteps grew closer. She reached the door, slammed it shut, and locked it, trembling, her breath ragged. Silence. A heavy silence. Then plop, plop, just behind the door. Ada backed away slowly. She knew it wasn't over. She wasn't alone anymore. She felt it, she knew it, and whatever was outside wanted to come in. Ada stood frozen, her back pressed against the wall, her breath uneven, her eyes fixed on the door. The plop, plop, plop continued, slow and steady, as if something drenched was dripping just behind the wood. Then nothing. An absolute silence, even more terrifying than the sound. Her muscles tensed, every nerve in her body screaming to escape. But where?
How?
She inched forward hesitantly. The door seemed intact. Maybe it was over. Her trembling hand reached for the latch. She hesitated, a knot of dread tightening in her throat. What if it wasn't over? But her rational mind still fought. She had to see, had to be sure. Slowly, ever so slowly, she cracked the door open. A freezing breeze rushed into the room. The threshold was empty. Nothing, just the peaceful night, as if nothing had happened. A nervous laugh escaped her. She must have hallucinated. Exhaustion and fear had amplified everything. But as she closed the door, she noticed something, a puddle of water just outside the entrance, and in the center, a footprint that wasn't hers. Her heart skipped a beat. She stepped back, but another drop of water fell from the ceiling. She looked up slowly, and there it was, hanging from the ceiling, an emaciated figure with unnaturally long limbs, white, empty eyes, and an expressionless face. It leaned toward her and smiled, a wide, inhuman smile. Ada screamed, but no sound came out. The light flickered, and darkness swallowed her. The next morning, the village was silent. Neighbors gathered in front of Ada's house. The door was ajar. Inside, a sour smell hung in the air. When they entered, they found the room flooded with water, and in the center was Ada, her body curled up, her eyes wide open, frozen in an expression of unspeakable terror. Her skin was cold and soaked, as if she had drowned without a single drop of water around her. Old Baba, Musa, arrived last. He observed the scene, shook his head slowly, and murmured in a grave voice, "She disturbed their rest." No one responded, for they all knew that that night, Ada hadn't died alone. Something had come with her, and it was still waiting in the shadows.